Hello, and welcome to the sixth and final episode of the CAD training series. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at some of the more miscellaneous features of CAD. Now, while I'm calling them miscellaneous, that doesn't make them any less important. These are all very important features that you will need to use at some point while you are dispatching your units in ARMS CAD. So some of the things, just to give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about in here, we're going to be talking about quick access to vehicle stops, incident sets, BOLOs, patrol activities, the CAD preferences screen and settings, and also how to interact with stacked and reassigned calls in the system. So all of these, like I said, are miscellaneous features, but they're all very important that you will need to know about to be able to function in ARMS day-to-day, in and out. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. So here we go. And here we are. So first thing we're going to take a look at here is going to be our vehicle stop button. Now in the previous episodes, we've taken a look at this top bar across the top, looking at next and previous and last and so on. In the previous video, we looked at names, vehicle, and property. This time we're going to move one more over and look at vehicle stop. Now what vehicle stop does is allows you to quickly and efficiently input a vehicle stop into the system without having to manually type in all the information into the CAD screen like we've done with the other events up to this point. So when I have to perform a vehicle stop, I just tap this vehicle stop button. That's going to open my vehicle stop screen, which will allow me to begin entering as much information as I have about this vehicle stop. So let's just say, for example, my vehicle stop is occurring at the All-American Plaza. That's going to automatically put in any of my street information in there for me as well. Then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put in the license plate of the vehicle that I'm pulling over. When I put in 123 ABC, you're going to notice immediately the bottom pane fills in with all past instances of that license plate. So I can look through this and I can find the vehicle if I've interacted with it before, and rather than having to fill out all this and create a duplicate vehicle, which I don't want to do, I can just click my vehicle down here, and that's going to automatically put in all my vehicle information for me. So you'll notice here I've got my state, my color, make and model, as well as my officer safety warning for this vehicle, all right here on the screen, just from that one click that we just did. At that point, the only thing remaining for me to do would be to assign my unit to this call. So if I picked Michael Bryant here, I'm going to assign Michael Bryant to my call. I'm going to hit save, and that is going to create my vehicle stop in the system. So notice here, all the information is from that vehicle stop screen. It's automatically put in vehicle stop. It automatically got my location information that we put in a second ago. I've got my unit assigned. They're already set as arrived because of their vehicle stop. We're assuming the officer's already there. And then in the notes, you'll see I have all the information about that vehicle. So in here, I can see all the past entries and all the past officer safety warnings that have been associated with this vehicle. And that's going to be saved in the notes that's going to be attached to this CAD event. So at that point, the only thing I have left to do is any of the other features we've talked about, adding names, possibly adding property, anything that we may want to do there. But for the most part, I just need to clear the officer from the scene. So once the officer radio is clear, I can go ahead and double-click that pane, and then I can select my disposition for my call. So I'm just going to say University Citation Issued, and that's going to clear out that call. So I just did a vehicle stop from start to finish with very little data entry put on me to do all that, and I have a complete incident with all the past vehicle information in there as well. The next item we're going to take a look at here is the incident set button. So my first question is going to be, what is an incident set? An incident set is a grouping of incidents. So previously in other iterations of ARMS and other CAD systems that we've seen in the past, all the CAD incidents are disconnected. They're not interconnected in the case of a major event. So if I had a major event on a campus like, let's say, a bomb threat. If I have a bomb threat on campus, I'll have separate incidents going on depending on the severity of the bomb threat. So if I had one officer that's working on evacuating a building, one officer across campus that's diverting traffic, and maybe another officer that's working with bomb squad. Those are three separate units on three separate types of incidents that I would want to keep separate in my CAD screen. so I can track them all in their own incidents. However, the problem comes that later on when I want to see those incidents as a group. So what I can do is I can make an incident set and put all the related incidents together in a group to where I can print them out together, look at them all at once, anything that I need to. But by making that incident set, that gives me that ability. So let's take a look at what happens when we add an incident to an incident set here. When I click on my incident set button up in the upper right hand corner, I get the incident set lookup screen. And this will allow me to pick an existing incident set or create a new one. Now, when I create a new incident set, I just have to give it a name. It's going to automatically give it a set number. I don't have to worry about that. But if I want to, I can also pick one that's already here, and I actually have an existing incident set called Vehicle Stops with Citations Issued. So if I click on that, it's going to automatically show me all the previous incidents that are in this set, and then I can hit Save, which is going to add this incident to the set as well. So when I do that, notice my little bubble fills in up here at the top. I've got my purple incident set button filled out, and it automatically puts in a note to let me know that incident was added to the set IS9 Vehicle Stops with Citations Issued. So now I can go back later and I can find all the incidents that fall into that category or are part of that major incident, whatever the case may be there. To do that, I can come up here to Functions, come all the way down to Incident Set Management, and that's going to give me the ability to click on each of my sets and see what incidents are assigned to those down here at the bottom. So when I click on Vehicle Stops with Citations Issued, below there I'll see the two incidents, my new one that I just did and one that was done earlier here that I can look at. I can open up each of them individually, or I can print selected, and it's going to print all of my CAD events that are all related to that set. Our next item we're going to take a look at here is the BOLO. BOLO is very similar to Vehicle Stop in that it's going to create a CAD event. It's a super fast way to be able to create a CAD event in the system without having to manually type in all this data. So when I go into BOLO, it's going to automatically allow me to add up here at the top. Now when I click Add, you're going to see I have the date and time entered. The expiration date is automatically a month in the future. And until that expiration date hits, this BOLO is going to be an active BOLO, which means if I run a search for active BOLOs, this one will pop up. Now I can change that. I can come over here and I can modify that to whatever I need to. If I go a little bit below there, you'll see I can also customize what the BOLO type is. So I've just got three options here for dangerous person, missing person, and stolen vehicle. So I'm going to go and make my example here today, dangerous person. My subject person description, I can come in here and I can actually type in any sort of information I need. This is just a text box. So I could say maybe subject is wearing red jacket and gray boots. So I can put that information in there. Below you'll see there's a field for subject vehicle description or contact information. These are all text boxes, so I can type in as much information as I have so that whenever I go back and review this or whenever I'm looking for this person, I have as much information as possible at my fingertips. Now when I hit Save here, I can also come down to the very bottom and attach any other bits of information that I may want to. That could be an involved party. That could be adding in a vehicle. That could be adding in photos or Word documents, PDFs, videos, audio files, any type of files and information that I need to attach to this. Once again, because the end goal is being able to use that to help find the person, vehicle, whatever the case may be. And so the more information, the better, because that's going to help us find that entity in the system or out in the world. And notice too, once I have my BOLO saved, it also does create a BOLO incident back here. Now notice I could work this BOLO just normally, or I can go ahead and clear it out. Either way, my BOLO will still be active until that date that we set earlier, which I believe was February 3rd, comes. Until then, this will be an active BOLO, and it'll appear as an active BOLO on any of the BOLO lists. Our next item we're going to take a look at here is going to be the patrol activities. So to get to patrol activities, we're just going to come up here to functions at the top, and we're going to go all the way down to the very bottom to where patrol activity lives. So patrol activity is, think of this like a simple CAD event. So rather than assigning an officer to something like a foot patrol and then having to pull them off every single time they do something on that foot patrol, we can assign them to a patrol activity of foot patrol. And then that way we're keeping track of the time they're spending doing that while also leaving them available in CAD to be able to be dispatched if they stumble across something, have to lock a door, find a suspicious person, whatever the case may be, of things that they could run into during their foot patrol. So when I first come into the screen here, you're going to see down at the bottom, I have my two current patrol activities going on right now. I've got mine that's going on right now, actually, doing a field interview at a tennis facility. So we can see them, we can click on them to read more about what's happening at these locations. Or if we wanted to add a patrol activity to assign an officer to one, we can come up here to add at the very top, and that's going to allow me to input as much data as I need to for this patrol activity. So I can say, when are they assigned to do it? Let's say he's doing this until the 3rd at 13:34. And then I can put in where they're going to be doing this. So let's say that they are going to be at the museum. And then I can go into, what are they being assigned to do? So let's go with something simple like a building check. So when I put in building check, I put in my museum, I hit save. That's going to now create a patrol activity in the system that I can use to see how long this officer spent doing a building check at the museum. Our next item we're going to take a look at here is going to be CAD preferences. So CAD preferences houses a bunch of settings that you can use to kind of change how CAD behaves. Our first item here is dispatch by beat. So dispatch by beat, we talked about a little bit in one of the first episodes, but basically what you can do is you can check this box, and when you do that, if you dispatch an event at a location that is assigned to a beat that also has an officer assigned to the same beat, then ARMS will automatically suggest that you dispatch that officer based on the location and the officer both occupying the same beat. So checking that box will merely make the system suggest that. The dispatcher still decides if they want to save that officer in there, change that officer to a different one, or remove the officer entirely. This will just create the suggestion feature, basically turning that aspect of it on for you when you are dispatching each new call. Below there, you'll notice I have an option for stamp receive time in the notes field. You'll notice in our notes up here, we do have several different places where notes are stored. By default, everything is given an ARMS date time stamp. So it's got a date, it's got a time, that's automatically there. Nobody can modify that. However, if I come in here and add, you'll notice since I have that setting on right now, it's automatically putting a timestamp in here for me. So then I could come in here and type out any extra information I may need. Hit save, and now I've got not only the timestamp that this was input, but I could also specify what timestamp this was received, which could be different. If I'm not typing this in as I'm listening to it, I may want to be able to backlog some of my radio traffic notes. So this will give you the ability to do that. Some departments don't want to handle it that way. They want to have only the prescribed, date timestamp to be put in there, and that's perfectly fine. Either way, that setting is right here with the stamp receive time in notes field option. Below there, I've got one monitor and two monitor options. So one monitor and two monitor, I'm using one monitor right now. You'll notice my whole screen is right here on one screen, one window. If I move this, it's all connected together. What two monitor does is it breaks out this bottom part of the screen, the two black fields here at the bottom, and makes it its own window. The reason you can do that is because whenever you take that and then drag it to another monitor somewhere and open it up full screen, you'll have a lot more real estate to be able to see a list of 20, 30, 40, 50 open calls at once and 20, 30, 40 available units all at once. So having that on its own screen gives you a lot more real estate to be able to see what's happening in your department right now. If you're not running that many units or you're not running that many active incidents, you may be better off just keeping it on one monitor. But that's why we give you the option. Some people prefer it one way. It's really just user preference for the most part of which way you would rather use the system. All right, so the last two things we want to take a look at here is two special situations that calls can fall into. One situation is call stacking, and the other one is call reassignment. So as a brief rundown of this, call reassignment and call stacking are both collisions in the system. So basically that means that there are situations where a dispatcher has assigned an officer to multiple calls. How is the system going to treat that? So the two examples we have are stacked and reassign. So first we're going to take a look at stacked. I'm going to show you a live example of call stacking and how it works. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this call we've already got open because I want to simplify this as much as possible. So in my open calls list, I'm going to create a call. So I'm going to create something that's going on. Let's say a fire alarm goes off. That fire alarm is happening at the museum, and I want to assign unit C4 to that call. So my officer is currently on scene. That's the important part here, is currently on scene at this location. Now, call number 2 comes in. Call number 2 is not a fire alarm. It is something, let's go, we've got an intoxicated person. A report of somebody is very intoxicated somewhere on campus, and that just happens to be at, we'll say back at the All-American Plaza again. So I've got my intoxicated person at All-American Plaza. I'm going to go ahead and assign C4 to this call as well. Now remember, my unit is already on scene at my fire alarm. So as I'm putting this in, I'm going to go ahead and just dispatch it out to them. Let's see what happens. So my fire alarm call is no different. Nothing has changed about this call in any way whatsoever. My officer's still working it. You know, any notes I have would still be there. All that information is still there. Now notice my other call, while it looks normal up here, down here it's in red and it has a status of stacked. So we basically have built a to-do list for our officer. So since the officer is already on scene at a place, we cannot assign them to a new call until they clear from that previous call. So if I had to, for example, here, let's say we finished up with the fire alarm, we double click and put in our timestamp underneath cleared, so 1341. And now I'm just going to go ahead and say that this was a false alarm for my fire alarm here. Now this screen is going to be new. This screen here is showing me, hey, you just cleared an officer off of this incident. Here's something that was waiting for them in the background. I've got an intoxicated person at Hill Drive. So then all we have to do is either hit assign now, or we can just double click the row, and that's going to assign the officer to this new call now that they have cleared from their previous call, the fire alarm. Now notice the space here. We could stack as many calls as we wanted onto a unit. We don't have to just stack 1 or 2. So we can have basically a full daily to-do list built up for an officer and then assign those calls and tasks out as the previous ones are completed. So when I do hit that assign now, my call that was previously in red and angry looking and had a status of stacked now is normal. It's yellow. It's dispatched. I go en route. I go arrived on scene, and eventually I clear from the scene and we're done. We've cleared the unit off. Now remember, the big part of that call stacking is that we already had boots on the ground in one location, and you can't be 2 places at once. So if we try to assign them to a second place, it's going to stack that call and hold that call until you clear the officer from the previous location. Now the second version of that is call reassignment. So remember, stacking, we created the to-do list, and it's because the person was on scene somewhere. Our second one is going to be reassignment, which is going to move the officer to the second call this time, but it's based on the officer being en route, not arrived on scene. So let's walk through an example of that as well. So if I come in here, add a new call, we're just going to do the same exact example we did a second ago. I've got my fire alarm. My fire alarm's going on at the museum, and I'm going to assign myself to this call. So notice the difference this time is I'm leaving this call en route. I'm not going arrived yet. So once I'm en route here, I'm green down at the bottom. Call number 2 comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and add in call number 2. I'm going to go ahead and put in my intoxicated person again. I'm going to go back to All-American Plaza. Everything is exactly the same as it was in the previous example up to this point, except that I am en route and not arrived. So this time, I'm going to go ahead and put in an en route time in call number 2. So when I do that, let's see what happens. My intoxicated person is here on top. This is call number 2. And call number 1 is here on the bottom. That's in red now and has a status of reassigned. So what happened up here on this call is that it marked no arrive time, it cleared them off of the call immediately, and put a note up here and said that unit Jason Worth reassigned to call 14. So when I come up here to call 14, this call looks completely normal. Because I was en route to one location, when you put me onto another location or another call, it's now rerouted me, reassigned me to call number 2. So now I'm en route to call number 2. I eventually radio in that I'm arrived. I eventually radio in that I'm cleared. Disposition goes normal. Now let's note another difference here. In the call stacking example earlier, we had a screen that popped up and said, hey, this call is waiting on unit C4. Do you want to assign them to it? In this situation, we have completely removed Jason Worth from this call. So 1345, he was, or 1344 here, he was completely pulled off of this call. This is not his call anymore. It could be anybody's call. It can be a different unit. So I could come in here, modify, and let's say assign unit 44 to this call. Do that, and then notice here it's gone ahead and gone back from a red call to a nice yellow call that I can dispatch normally from here on out. I didn't even have to put in a different unit. I could have put in the same unit. So once C4 cleared from that intoxicated person, I can go ahead and reassign Jason Worth again to this call. So now he's on here twice. Now, why would we want 2 rows here? We always want to have the 2 rows because we want to keep track of the time that Jason Worth spent en route to the location the first time before they got reassigned. Just like we want to keep the time that he spent en route the second time. So we want to make sure that we use these to very quickly and easily track if an officer's been there multiple times. That's perfectly fine, but we want to track every time they've been there because we're going to do this for our departmental accountability and making sure that we have every movement tracked in the system.